What's up, you beautiful bastards? Hope you're having a fantastic Monday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today, one of the most requested stories of the day today, is this massive story around the Sinclair Broadcast Group that has just blown up. They're one of the largest broadcast groups in America. They have over 190 TV stations, and you may have heard about them in the past. John Oliver did a piece about their must-runs. Sinclair reportedly regularly sends video segments that these stations have to run. They include things like the terrorism news update. You've got commenters speaking in support of Trump, right? So to many it appears like there's this obvious lean and it's being forced on these TV stations to run these pieces. Well, back in March, CNN broke news that Sinclair was going to do a mandatory push of a promo that condemns what they call fake news from national outlets. And while CNN didn't publish a script of the promo, they did publish select quotes and also internal memos about the promo. The memo also saying that corporate will monitor the comments and send replies to your audience on your behalf. The memo then instructs the anchors to look apolitical, then describing what that looks like. Last Friday, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer posted the script, this after a local affiliate began airing their mandatory promos. And then on Saturday, this story blew up because Deadspin put out a compilation video featuring several affiliates reading the same parts of script.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories that aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
And of course, the big standout of this compilation of news anchors doing a mandatory read. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to a democracy. And so, of course, you had many people saying that's exactly what Sinclair Broadcast Group is doing right here. They have an agenda where they're trying to control how people think, that they're pushing a certain angle, a certain bias, and they're pushing this across via mandatory reads. Now, I've also seen people say, well, if those local news anchors, they don't agree with this, they don't have to say it, they could leave. Well, according to some reporting, it might actually be a little more complicated than that. Matt Pierce, who's a correspondent for the Los Angeles Times, he tweeted, a Sinclair journalist who has been trying to resist from inside the newsroom, but who does not have a union, explains why it's so hard for TV anchors to refuse the Sinclair's editorial edicts. They have contracts that penalize them if they quit. Then featuring screenshots of direct messages, saying usually there's a provision in your contract saying that if you quit, you owe something along the lines of your base pay times 40%, and then times whatever percentage of your contract is left. And then if you've gotten any bonuses of any kind, you pay those back. So for me, that's like 5 or 6K, I think, but I've heard of people having to pay more. And you can't cash out your vacation days, and then there's usually a provision saying you can't work at another station within the same market. Matt Pierce then also tweeting out a picture of the alleged contract that this person had. And also an interesting note is this is not the first time Sinclair Broadcast Group has tried to get this message across. In March of 2017, there was another must-run feature. This one featuring Sinclair Vice President of News, Scott Livingston, reading what appears to be a nearly identical script to the one that recently was done but with local news hosts, appearing to try and take advantage of people's trust of their local news anchors. Now, on the opposite end of things, you also have people saying this isn't the biggest deal, pointing out that if you listen to the full promo and not just the compilation videos that have been circulating, it's ultimately been all these TV stations saying that we are striving to be the best we can. There's a place on our website called Content Concerns. If you have issues with our reporting, report it there. Fake news is a real problem. We do our work. Thank you for watching. And my personal takeaway from this is that it's a little bit of the two. The first thing I'll say is that yes, it is a horrifying look to see all of those local anchors repeating the same script, talking about all of these other places. They're trying to push an agenda. They have bias. They're trying to control what you think in a mandatory read spot from a company that has mandatory run segments, right? That really doesn't shout independent and trusted coverage. But at the same time, I can't help but think that this is just an incredibly obvious and apparent example of an issue that we have with most news. Like when I flip on TV news and I try to watch as many channels as possible just to see what they're reporting, how they're reporting it, it is hard not to see bias and agenda everywhere. Like sometimes when I pop on Fox News, it feels like it's gone to the point where it's almost state-run media. And then you have like the CNNs and some MSNBCs of the world where it feels like they're wearing patches that say resistance on it. And obviously I understand I'm not talking about every individual anchor or contributor that is on one of those platforms, right? And I feel like some of that comes from people's own personal bias that they in their head, they think that they've pushed to the side. And for others, it seems outright intentional, but it is incredibly important to remember that there is a possibility and there is a likelihood of bias and agenda, and it's because ultimately that information is coming from another human being, right? And fake news is a topic that the big guys have mentioned themselves. You hear Fox News anchors talking about fake news. You have CNN, their Apple is an Apple commercial. Everyone's vying to be your trusted source of news, to be the titan among the trash. So that's my take on that as just a generally distrusting person. Along with this, though, there's also a side story between Trump and Sinclair Broadcast Group. This because this morning Donald Trump tweeted, "So funny to watch fake news networks among the most dishonest groups of people I have ever dealt with criticize Sinclair Broadcasting for being biased. Sinclair is far superior to CNN and even more fake NBC, which is a total joke." And so that's a thing of note, especially when you pair it with two other things. One, the mandatory fake news that's threatening our democracy read. And two, Sinclair Broadcast Group needs government approval right now. Specifically, they need approval from the Justice Department and the FCC for a $3.9 billion acquisition to buy Tribune Media that would expand their reach. And so you have people accusing the group of using their control over all of these TV stations as a way to kind of just grease the wheels along with this other deal. But all in all, that's where we are right now. That is the story, and I want to pass the question off to you of what is your takeaway from this? Seeing the compilation video, is it shocking to you? Is it scary to you? What does it make you think about local news in general? I'd love to know what you're thinking in those comments. But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today, and today in Awesome, brought to you by DeFranco Elite. DeFranco Elite, of course, one of the best ways to support this very apparently advertiser-unfriendly show. Also a great way to support everything we're building and get exclusive and extras now. Early videos, exclusive live streams, exclusive access, exclusive merchandise, and a lot more is going to be there in the coming months. If you want to check it out, you want to try it out for a bit, go to DeFrancoElite.com and subscribe. And the first bit of awesome today is actually self-promo awesome. If you didn't see on this channel yesterday, I uploaded a bonus video. That was the 1-hour interview / podcast with Sean Evans of Hot Ones. It's a great time, great video, and a series I am very excited to be bringing back. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it after this video. Then we got a trailer for The Quiet Place, which I can't wait to see. Then one of my favorite April Fool's things from yesterday is Netflix put out a video about how they acquired Seth Rogen, acquiring he as a person, his thoughts, his dreams, even just the idea of him. Also, on the note of fake news, I feel like unless it was something super silly like this, some of the people just making false claims, it was harder to tell on the face of everything what was fake and what wasn't, just after the past year and a half we've had. I feel like there have been so many moments where it was like, oh, that would never, oh, it happened, really interesting, okay. And so that's why yesterday I pretty much just stayed off the internet. I was like, I don't have the time for this. Anyway, moving on. We also had Aubrey Plaza and Dan Stevens hijacking a stranger's Tinder. James Corden getting hit in slow motion by the slow-mo guys. And if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. Then in a quickie requested story, we had Jake Paul in the news. This because the Hollywood Reporter broke the news that Jake Paul is developing a YouTube talk show for YouTube Red. And so I had people ask me, what do you think about this? Can you believe that YouTube is doing this? And my response is yes, I can believe YouTube is doing this. One, despite Jake Paul having had a year of controversies after Logan Paul's whole suicide exploitation scandal, he, and I mean, media outlets are actually calling him this, he has actually been identified by some outlets now as the good Paul. And he's also done things some would say to just better his image. Videos where he tried to help hurricane victims. Recently, he put out that gun reform video. So maybe there are legitimate reasons for YouTube to go, oh, okay, well, he's pretty brand safe. But also separate from that, there are instances where it does appear that YouTube is giving him some sort of preferential treatment. Jake Paul seems to be in a special class of YouTube channel where he can feature pretty much just a half-naked woman in the thumbnail. He's got regular ads and mid-rolls on that thing. But someone talking about their coming out story, they're getting demonetized. And that's just his regular channel. The final thing I'll say is ultimately numbers move. If there are enough kids that watch Jake Paul's content that can convert their accounts to YouTube Red, YouTube of course is gonna try and go for it. Jake Paul just needs to not kill anybody and or feature someone that's been killed in a video for the next 6 months. He gets 3 to 7 million views on every video. YouTube's thinking about those conversions. That said, for the time being, it also appears that YouTube is distancing themselves because a spokeswoman reportedly told The Hollywood Reporter, last year we engaged in early development deals with a handful of YouTube creators as part of our normal process to evaluate new creative ideas. There is no series order currently in place. So it's being developed, the whole season's not a done deal yet, but honestly, I would be shocked if YouTube didn't greenlight it. Then in quickie news that will most likely leave you pissed off, Ethan Couch is in the news. Couch, of course, was referred to as the affluenza kid, which unfortunately does very much so minimize what he did. If you don't remember, when Couch was 16, he was incredibly drunk, he was driving, in fact, 3 times over the legal limit, and he ended up hitting and killing 4 people. In addition to that, he injured several others, including 2 people that got launched from the back of the truck. Those 2 severely injured. 1 is no longer able to move or talk due to a brain injury. Right, so that happened, and then in 2013, a judge gave him no jail time for this. Prosecutors saw 20 years in jail, got 0. And it appears that it went that way because a psychologist said that Couch was a victim of affluenza. He was a product of wealthy, privileged parents that never set limits for him, so he didn't really know what was wrong. He was put on probation for 10 years, and then like an idiot, he violated that probation, ended up fleeing the country country, went to Mexico with his mother. He ends up being found, he's sent to the US, a Texas judge then gives him about 2 years in prison. And the reason Ethan Couch is back in the news today is because today he has been released. Back into society, granted on probation. He'll reportedly have to wear an ankle monitor, an alcohol detecting patch, submit to drug testing, abide by a 9 p.m. curfew, and have a video interlock ignition device installed in his vehicle, but still back out into the world after having killed 4 people and massively injuring 2. And it's usually with stories like these where people say, well, Phil, you don't show the images of mass murderers, you don't share their names. Yes, but with stories like this one, it is different. This is injustice. People like Ethan Couch who get away with this horrible shit should never be able to lose that association with their name. The Ethan Couches of the world, the Brock Turners of the world, we should never forget those names. Then let's talk about the updates and escalations about the possible international trade war. Of course, in the past, we talked about the 25% tariff on steel, 10% on aluminum. Initially, it was a tariff across the board. Then it was, well, we're not gonna hit Canada and Mexico. The groups that ended up being excluded included Canada, Mexico, the European Union, Australia, Argentina, Brazil, South Korea. Noticeably and purposefully, China, of course, not on that list. And so China's Ministry of Commerce said in a statement late Sunday that those exemptions violated the World Trade Organization rules that prohibit members from discriminating against other World Trade Organization members. Also adding they hoped the US government would withdraw the tariffs as soon as possible so the trading products between China and the United States would return to a normal track. And along with that, China announced that they are imposing their own new tariffs, specifically tariffs of 15% on 120 American products. This with things like fruits, nuts, wine, steel pipes. Also tariffs of 25% on 8 other products, this including pork and recycled aluminum. China's saying they're doing this in order to safeguard China's interests and balance the losses caused by the steel and aluminum tariffs. And specifically on pork, this is something the US National Pork Producers Council actually warned would happen last month, saying the previous measures would have a significant negative impact on rural America. And it appears they knew this was going to happen because the US pork industry sold $1.1 billion worth of products to China last year. It's their 3rd largest export market. And all in all, it appears that the tariffs have been announced on about $3 billion worth of products. Now, with that said, this is probably not the end of this situation. You've got Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin saying, there's talking behind the scenes, we're trying to get everything handled, but it's expected the Trump administration is going to announce which specific products they are going to target with China soon. And it's feared that if that happens, China will then retaliate by going after soybeans, airplanes, but ultimately we're gonna have to wait and see what happens next. Then let's talk about updates around the David Hogg, Laura Ingraham situation and also some things that have been offshoots of that situation. If you didn't watch Friday's show, I'll give you the simplified, bring you up to speed version. Fox News host Laura Ingraham goes on Twitter. She kind of mocks David Hogg, of course, activist, Parkland, Florida school shooting survivor. This for what she called whining, that he didn't get into the schools that he wanted, even with a 4.2 GPA. Hogg and others start a campaign to contact her advertisers, get them to pull their advertising. And he do pull their advertising. Laura apologizes. David Hogg does not accept that apology. More and more advertisers then continue to pull out, more than a dozen have so far. And the update we're seeing now in that situation is that Laura is taking a 1-week vacation. And so really the main question we have is this a Bill O'Reilly vacation where he's really actually on his way out, or is this more of a Sean Hannity situation where he is actually going to come back? Obviously the situations around both, it wasn't really apples to apples, but it is really a test case for how strong is the brand. I mean, Hannity's brand was so strong he was able to take advertisers leaving the outrage against him as a way to get other sponsor deals. So it will be interesting to see what happens next. Also, as far as what some people are calling the targeting of these Parkland students and specifically Hogg, we had Frank Stallone and Ted Nugent in the news. Sylvester Stallone's younger brother tweeting, "This David Hogg pussy is getting a little big for his britches. I'm sure someone from his age group is dying to sucker punch this rich little bitch. Watch him run home like the coward he is. He's the worst rep for today's youth headline grabbing punk." And of course, many people were outraged by this, started sharing it all over the place. Frank Stallone ends up deleting the tweet. We had many people saying, how can you call for this kid that you do not agree with to be attacked? You're a 67-year-old man seemingly lusting over the idea that someone younger than you will punch this kid you don't agree with. Now, after a lot of the backlash, like I said, Stallone deletes the tweet, and then he tweets, "Everyone, and to David Hogg especially, I want to deeply apologize for my irresponsible words. I would never in a million years wish or promote violence to anyone anywhere on this planet. After what these kids went through, I'm deeply ashamed. Please accept my apology. Frank." Which, of course, it'd be very easy to tear that apology apart, that I would never, you're commenting on it because you actually did it. Is it, if this is a legitimate apology, less than the man that you strive to be? Okay, sure. And I would say to me personally, this is a situation, if you look at Frank Stallone's normal social media interaction levels, this very much looks like an example of someone who is in their small little Twitter bubble where they can just say anything and no one cares, and all of a sudden getting a lot of attention they didn't expect, and then just cowering down to that mob. And then, of course, finally you had Ted Nugent, which really, nothing from Ted Nugent really should be surprising. He said things that Hillary Clinton should be hung, called Obama a subhuman mongrel, told him to suck his tiger dick, and now he has added this beautiful quote talking about Parkland students turned activists. These poor children, I'm afraid to say this, and it hurts me to say this, but the evidence is irrefutable. They have no soul. Also referring to them and March for Our Lives organizers as mushy-brained children. And there's really not much to add there. No one's shocked Ted Nugent said that. But also over the weekend, we saw a different kind of outrage. People angry at Joan Walsh. She's a political contributor for CNN, and she popped up because of Kyle Kashup. Kyle is also a survivor of the Parkland, Florida school shooting, but he did not join March for Our Lives. In fact, he's pro-Second Amendment and has been very critical for March for Our Lives, as well as the students involved in it. And he tweeted out a screenshot of Walsh's likes, featuring tweets like this to Kyle, saying, "Shame on you. I lost my daughter in this massacre. This has nothing to do with ego or politics for me. You clearly are being handled and pushed to take an opposing view. Did you lose a family member in this? Do not judge those of us who did." To which Walsh responded, "Wow, Kyle, are you really policing who likes tweets from a grieving Parkland father who lost his daughter? Good luck handling your stress, Kyle." Which of course resulted in a lot of people saying, "Wow, Walsh, are you really bullying this kid?" Walsh then seemingly tried to dismiss the reaction, tweeting, "Wow, my mentions are now a sewer of NRA trolls and MAGA bots. Happy Easter and or Passover, everybody." And when I look at moments like this, I often wonder, how did you even end up in this place? The easy response to that tweet from Kyle is, my likes are not me going, "Yes, I agree," especially as someone involved in news. I'm essentially hitting like to bookmark this tweet because I want to be able to showcase what people are saying about individual situations. That's all you had to say, but instead you told a Parkland, Florida school shooting survivor, "Good luck handling your stress." And I feel like this is one of those moments that we need to look out to the world and go, okay, so the people that were saying, you know, the March for Our Lives kids, they were off limits or they were not off limits. Are you treating this situation the same? Because you should. If the kid, the activist, the whoever, if they are all of a sudden treated differently because what they are saying fits your narrative, you're a hypocrite. And it's on that note that I'm going to end this story and pass the question off to you. What is your takeaway from any and all of these instances? Do you feel like people are being hypocritical with who they are outraged for or not? Any and all thoughts on this story, I'd love to know them in the comments down below. And that's where I'm going to end today's show. And remember, if you liked this video, you like what I'm trying to do on this channel, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, make sure you have notifications turned on. Also, if you missed the last Philip DeFranco show, you want to catch up, click or tap right there to watch that. Or if you want to watch the conversation with Sean Evans, click or tap right there. But that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.